Over 100 million years ago, the coastline of Alabama was about 100 miles north of where it is today. Now, this obviously caused many different changes to the state, whether it be the geology of the state, the biology, and the environments, etc. And believe it or not, this ancient coastline directly influences the political maps of Alabama to this day. Without wasting any more time, let's just get right into it. During the start of the late Cretaceous period, about 100 million years ago, North America was almost completely unrecognizable compared to what it is today. It was basically split into two continents. You had Laramidia in the west and Appalachia in the east. Due to the much warmer climate of the Earth back then, this caused ocean levels to rise considerably. And of course, Alabama was majorly affected by this. So the sea that cut North America in half was called the Western Interior Seaway, and it was full of all kinds of crazy animals. But there's only a select few animals that we're here to talk about today, and they're some of the tiniest of the Western Interior Seaway. Trillions of tiny animals called coccolithophores made up the bottom levels of the food chain in this seaway. And there's one thing that all of these animals had in common. All of their shells were made of calcium carbonate. So picture this. Over millions of years, trillions of these animals died and stacked up on the bottom of the ocean, compressing under their own weight. And since their shells were made of calcium carbonate, the shells didn't decay, so when the animal died, all that was left was these hard shells that never went anywhere. Eventually, these condensed into what is now known as the Alabama chalk beds. So it's no secret that Alabama is known for its chalk beds, some of the most famous being the white cliffs of chalk seen in central Alabama. Now, natural chalk beds like this are very, very dense, and so water and soil can't pass through them because they're so dense. So after the Western Interior Seaway receded, Alabama shaped into what we now know of it today. So over millions of years, nutrients from dead organic matter built up on top of these chalk beds, and since the beds are so dense, this nutrients had nowhere to go. This is what became eventually known as the Alabama Black Belt. Fast forward a few million years, and the stage is set for humans who eventually build in Alabama. So it's the 18th and 19th century, and farmers in Alabama discovered this belt of land in the center of the state was so rich in soil nutrients. And so because of this, obviously they started farming. One of the most common crops that farmers planted in this area was cotton. Eventually, they planted so much of it, they ended up building plantations on these farms. And seeing as this was before the American Civil War, slave labor was used very commonly on these plantations for many years. Once the American Civil War had ended and the slaves were freed, most of these former slaves stayed in the counties that they were enslaved in. And to this day, most of these former slave counties have the highest number of African Americans in the state. And based off of the patterns seen in many American elections over the past many decades, we can see that African Americans primarily vote Democrat. So if we look at an Alabama election map, to this day, this entire belt going across the center of the state are all blue counties voting Democrat. Now, if you look at a map of Alabama during the Cretaceous period and then compare that to this Alabama map today, they are almost identical. This is a direct correlation between the coastline 100 million years ago and the election results of the state today. Honestly, I love talking about this subject because it's so interesting to see how something so old, over 100 million years ago, can still directly affect the state to this day. Now, it goes without saying, but since the bottom half of Alabama was completely under the ocean during the Cretaceous period, there's plenty of awesome fossils to be found in the Black Belt region. And if you want to see what that's like finding those fossils, be sure to click the videos linked here. Thank you.